I was scheduled to work all day, but at the last minute my client canceled the appointment. Her child got sick, and she had to take him to the hospital. Of course, I understood her, but everything was boiling inside me. I really needed this job. But nothing can be done, and besides, it would be stupid to be angry with her for something that did not depend on her. She was one of my best clients, so it was only a temporary inconvenience. On the way home, I noticed that my work truck was running low on fuel. I didn't have much money with me, but at least I could write it off as business expenses. Thank God for small miracles. I also had to take the truck to get the brakes repaired, but that would have been more difficult. It's not that the business lacked money, but it would have been time away from service, and I needed every damn job I could get. While the truck was filling up, I walked into the convenience store and went to the checkout counter. The cashier looked at me and said, "How are you doing on this fine Monday?" Trying to lighten the situation, I replied, "Not so bad. I unexpectedly had half a day free today, so maybe I can do something around the house." It was true, I could work at home, but I was still worried that I didn't have work that evening. What will happen to you? I was hungry, and this Valero had unusually good cold meat sandwiches. Give me a club turkey sandwich. And guess what? I've been having so much luck lately. How about 5 tickets to tonight's Lotto America? And add the all-star bonus. She printed out the ticket and handed it to me along with the sandwich. $15, please. I gave her the last 20 from my wallet, and she gave me $5 in change. The change and ticket went straight into my wallet. Heck, I thought, for $10, maybe I'll get lucky. Today's jackpot was only 10 million, much less than competing lotteries Powerball and Mega Millions. But the odds were better, still terrible odds overall, but at least a little better. Heck, even second prize considering the all-star multiplier wouldn't be terrible. Now that the truck was full of fuel, I drove slowly home. I told myself I was driving slowly to watch out for children who might be playing in the street. In fact, I just didn't want to go home, but I had no other choice where to go. I parked in front of my garage, took a few deep breaths, and decided to sit for a while and eat my sandwich. My thoughts drifted a little, and I thought about how my life had turned out: a 30-year-old man with no money, a falling-apart house, and a wife who was never good enough. I should probably introduce myself. My name is William O'Neill, and as you might have guessed from that last name, my roots are 100% Irish. I was born in a hospital and then raised on a farm near the small town of southern Northern Hills in the state of, you know what? Just like in The Simpsons, South North Hills is one of those towns that could be in any state. All I can say for sure is that this is not your state, no matter what state you are in, and definitely not in California. With the exception of my 4 years in the Navy, I still live in my hometown. On my parents' farm just outside of town, I learned to work the land, care for animals, maintain and repair machinery, and do most of the home repairs, including plumbing and electrical. We didn't have a lot of extra money growing up. Parents usually invested additional funds back into the farm, but we always had enough food and clean clothes too. After graduating from high school, unable to find a better solution, I joined the Navy and was sent to San Diego. That's where I met Christy Nichols. She was physically charming, incredibly beautiful, 2 orders of magnitude more beautiful than me. She was 5'7", perfectly proportioned, not plump but well-shaped, shoulders covered with strawberry blonde hair, and the most piercing blue eyes I had ever seen. Those eyes seemed to penetrate straight into my soul. Like I said, she was too good for me. I am also not without attractiveness, but no one will ever confuse me with Adonis. I'm 5'11" tall and weigh about 180 pounds, pure muscle mass accumulated from years of farming, military service, and my current job. I also have reddish hair, which is further evidence of my Irish heritage. By the way, it was my best friend from Australia, Mick, who nicknamed me Blue Eye because of my hair. It seems to be an Australian tradition to call anyone with red hair Blue Eye. I didn't really like being called Bill or Billy, and William sounded too formal, so Blue Eye stuck, and that's what everyone started calling me. When I met Christy, she didn't want to date me at first. She dated a guy named Chad for a couple of years, but eventually realized that the relationship was extremely toxic and left it. There was mutual attraction, but she said she wasn't sure she was ready to fall in love again so quickly. We broke up that day, and she took my number, although she did not give hers. The idea was that she would call me if she wanted to rekindle the relationship. I hoped she would call, but I didn't really count on it. As it turned out, a month after our first meeting, she contacted me again, just at the moment when I had almost lost hope of seeing her again. Having no other plans at the time, we met again and began to meet more regularly. After a few dates, we decided that we would date exclusively. 6 months later, we were madly in love with each other. A couple of months before my contract ended, Christy and I had that conversation. We were talking about our plans after my return to civilian life. I wanted to go home. It was that I knew where my roots were and where I thought I had the best chance of building some sort of life and career. I loved San Diego, but I could never afford to live there. Besides, California didn't appeal to me. Let me be provincial, but I liked the simple life. Christy, on the other hand, knew nothing but San Diego. As far as she knew, I was from a place dominated by rednecks. I decided that the best way was education. I explained that although we are not on the ocean, we have a nice lake with parks and beaches. I emphasized the more changeable climate. I've always said the easiest job in the world is being a weather anchor in San Diego. She was especially interested when I described some form of frozen water and the fun that could be had in the snow. I showed her that my hometown had almost all the amenities that San Diego had. She eventually agreed, and I returned to the southern North Hills with Christy. We lived with my parents in their big farmhouse for some time. At first, I wasn't sure. I knew I would have a place to come back to, of course, but I was coming back with a plus one. My parents were cool. If it's good for you, it's good for us. It was good, but I was still worried. It wasn't worth it. Christy fell in love with my parents. In fact, Christy started calling them mom and dad. Her own parents, unfortunately, died just a couple of years ago, so my parents became a kind of surrogate for her. We married in a simple civil ceremony a few months after returning home, and I set about looking for a decent job and a home. We have also decided to wait now and get our financial foundation in place, but we would like to have children sometime in the future. We were still young, we were only in our 20s, why rush? It wasn't that we didn't make love. Sex with this woman was absolutely amazing, and she always seemed ready for me. I'm sure it could literally scrape the chrome off the toe ball, although I decided not to test that out in practice. I definitely didn't hesitate to answer her in the same way. She smelled and tasted most amazing, and I never missed an opportunity to make sure she got her way multiple times. After serving in the Navy, I didn't want to work for anyone else. Too many bosses took credit for my work, but blamed me for every failure, even theirs. I knew I wanted to work for myself, be my own boss, and have all the successes and failures be my own. What I would do, however, was still a mystery. Worst case scenario, I could always get a job at a local workshop. I have always had a talent for repairing mechanical devices and machines, a skill that was honed to perfection when I was a machinist's mate in the Navy. I knew college wasn't for me. I did okay in school, but I never had the patience to sit in a classroom all day. Christy, for her part, seemed to show no interest in finding a job. With nothing more than a high school education and little real-world experience, she didn't have many professional opportunities, although even working as a waitress or in retail would have been fine for me. Christy claimed that she did not have enough strength for this. I didn't think much about it at the time. Maybe if we'd had kids a little earlier than we planned, she'd have been in a good position to be a stay-at-home mom. That's what I convinced myself, at least. My best friend Mick gave me the idea. Mick pointed out that for some reason there was a noticeable shortage of tradesmen and landscapers in our area. It was all over social media, a lot of complaints and calls for help from people who couldn't get a plumber or electrician to come in less than 2 months, 2 weeks in case of a dire need. If you haven't had a garden service, forget it, and those who had often complained about angular and careless work. But what's the alternative? Getting your hands dirty? Never. So that's how Mick and I set up our business. It was a combination of gardening and maintenance services. In winter, we worked on snow removal. With a solid business plan written by Mick, I was able to convince the bank to give us enough funds to purchase 2 work trucks and all the necessary equipment for garden maintenance and home repairs. Everyone in town knew there was a lot of room for our type of business, and it seemed like our loan officer was one of those who desperately needed help. He ended up becoming one of our best clients. We kept things simple and charged reasonable rates, and since Mick was single, he was available for emergency calls at any time of the day or night. We invested all income into a common pot, paid all business expenses from it, and divided the rest in half. Any cash tips we might receive remained the property of whoever received them. This was done for practical reasons. Once money entered the company's common pot, it became subject to reporting to the IRS. Technically, they should have been declared anyway, but what they don't know doesn't hurt them. Plus, it usually evened out. And it was a good way to at least have some cash on hand that Christy didn't need to know about. Looking for a home was an interesting time for us. In hindsight, this should have been another red flag. I had some money saved up from my time in the Navy, so we would at least have a decent down payment. Despite this, it was difficult to find something in our price range. Because of my work, it was difficult to obtain financing. The business was already doing well, but the banks considered the income too unstable, so they could only lend me a certain percentage. We were thinking about buying a home through the business, but Mick and I wanted to keep our personal affairs separate from the business as much as possible. This left Christy and I with 2 options: buy a much smaller starter home or a larger home that needed some renovation. In hindsight, we should have taken the third option, renting a place for a while. But Christy thought it was a waste of money. She just wanted a place we could call our own. Christy wanted a bigger house. I didn't care. I didn't want to spend my free time renovating the house after a hard day at work. You could always sell and move to a larger home when the time was right. We had several arguments during the house selection process. She couldn't seem to understand why I couldn't just dig deep into my pocket and buy the house she really wanted. I couldn't understand how a person who contributes absolutely nothing could demand so much. Also, I couldn't get her to understand that I simply didn't have anything else to dig from. Again, this should have been a red flag, but we were still at the point in the relationship where post-reconciliation sex was absolutely amazing. In the end, we came to a compromise and bought a larger house. It was an old house with 4 bedrooms and 3 bathrooms in a lower middle-class area called Elysian Fields. I don't know what this place looked like 150 years ago, when the settlement was founded and the city began to grow, but now there was nothing Elysian there and almost no Fields. Unless you count the Fields family, who lived 4 doors down from us, but I don't think the town's founders had that in mind. It wasn't a slum, but from our living room you could see a slum. The house had a nice workshop with its own power, and the almost acre lot had potential, but needed time and work. The house itself needed updating. The wiring was starting to burn out in several places, the kitchen was outdated, and the bathrooms had suffered some water damage over the years. Nothing I couldn't handle given the time and money. But if it made the princess happy, then at least I could imagine the potential the house and grounds had. And this is how we arranged our lives. It didn't take long for word of mouth to kick in, and soon Mick and I had almost more work than we could handle. Sometimes we worked together, but more often we split up and did our own tasks. We actually thought about hiring more people, but decided we didn't want to deal with taxes and full-time employees' salaries. However, during the busier summer months, we hired 1 or 2 high school students. It was a good way for them to earn some pocket money, and at the same time they could learn some skills. Overall, we were really lucky and made good money, so much so that I should have been able to live quite comfortably and have enough money to upgrade my own home. Over time, I started to notice a few things. First, no matter how hard I worked and no matter how much our business brought in, I never had any extra money. Every time I thought I had some money left, something would happen that would require an expensive repair. Or the princess saw a designer handbag or a completely impractical pair of shoes that she simply needed. She once took a fancy to a little Cadillac XTS and kept pestering me until I finally bought it for her. Secondly, the princess's attitude towards me began to change, so subtle that I didn't even notice until it had been going on for about 6 years. Where initially her overall attitude was loving, and we couldn't seem to get enough of each other in bed, now her little pet names took on an offensive tone to me. Our sex life, which had diminished over time, came to an almost complete stop. When we did it, she made it feel almost like pity. Third, she never stopped pressuring me to make more money. What the hell do you want me to do, princess? I'm already taking on as much work as I can. I barely have enough time to get this house you wanted in decent condition. Meanwhile, you seem to have a closet full of designer clothes that I've never seen, boxes full of expensive jewelry, and the bathroom looks like an advertisement for salon products. If you think we need money, try to find a job. Then you can. Buy every expensive thing you want, and maybe I'll have a few dollars left over to actually finish this damn house. I was almost screaming by the end. Big mistake. This led to her denying me sex for almost a year, which, to be honest, wasn't as bad as I thought. At this time, thoughts about the what-ifs of breaking up with this bitch began to swirl in my head. The problem was that I still loved her, although it was becoming increasingly difficult for me to love her. The fact is that I am generally a person who always hopes for the best. I also didn't believe in divorce. I was raised to believe that marriage is for life to the exclusion of all others, and my parents were the perfect example of this. Plus, I had a bad feeling that divorce would be costly. I didn't know very well how it worked, but I had heard several stories where a woman found herself a good lawyer and literally went over the man like a steamroller. For now, I decided that it was cheaper to keep it. That's how I found myself that Monday, sitting in my entrance. Thank God for the occasional tips I received from grateful customers. Christy never found out about this money, and it was the only way I could cope with everything and afford a little of what I needed, or at least the products. Coming out of my thoughts and shaking the breadcrumbs off my chest, I got out of the truck and went into the house. Strangely, the living room was in darkness. Lazy as she was, Christy was usually up by this time and at least watching TV, if not walking around town spending my damn money. Whatever, I thought. I took off my boots, hung up my work shirt, and headed to the bedroom when I heard, you guessed it, sounds that signaled that my marriage was completely and irrevocably broken. I stopped. Take me, Chad, take me. I heard moans and sighs from someone I assumed was Chad. Wait a minute, wasn't her toxic ex called Chad? How the hell did he end up here? This time Chad. So, baby, when are you going to dump this loser so we can finally be real together? Chad, honey, you know I can't just yet. I'm trying to save up some money so I can hire a good lawyer so I can clean him up properly. Maybe I can even take over his business. He makes a good living out of it. In fact, I think this bastard is hiding something from me. He must be making a ton of money because he works all the time. The stupid woman clearly did not understand that. Running a business involves large expenses, and B, I was already spending the money I earned on her whims. Was this what it was all about? Was I not providing her with the life she wanted? I later found out that even though Christy broke up with Chad years ago, Chad never accepted it. I guess kids today call it ghosting. Either way, Chad eventually managed to track Christy down. He came to town and just accidentally ran into Christy one day when she was shopping for unwanted jewelry. By then, our marriage had already begun to lose its shine, so it was not difficult for her to get him back into bed. And he cleverly exploited her frustration that I didn't have more money to spend on her. Chad continued, "Damn, baby, I've been waiting for you for 8 long years. I've already had to spend 2 years in this shitty country town. I know it'll be worth it in the end, but damn, we're both tired of living on crumbs. When this idiot has a lot of money, isn't there a way to get this money early so we can get out of this hole?" Again, I'm not sure what kind of money they thought I had. I once read an article by a psychologist that described how lazy people with no income become insanely jealous of those who, in their opinion, have money. Perhaps this applies here. Christy replied, 8 years. Interesting. but she never seemed to connect the dots and realize it was a stalker. After her last comments, all my thoughts about saving this marriage completely disappeared, and my thoughts began to turn to how I could burn the two of them. One of my thoughts was to literally burn them. It's like setting a house on fire with them. While this idea had some appeal, it had several obvious drawbacks. First, firefighters are very good at finding accelerants. Secondly, I did not have a solid alibi as to my whereabouts. Third, even though the house was insured, it would only cover the actual replacement cost, which I believed was slightly less than my remaining mortgage balance. Fourthly, the insurance still did not pay in case of arson. I briefly considered storming into my bedroom and confronting them, but just as quickly decided that discretion was the better part of valor. I had heard enough and needed to think about my next steps. Besides, I suddenly realized that I really needed to go to the toilet. I considered using the bathroom in the hallway, but quickly decided that they would hear the flushing noise and wonder why I was home. Although they didn't want me to catch them, I also decided that they didn't need to know that I knew. This will give me the element of surprise when I launch a trap on them. The problem was that I had no idea what this trap was. I had a sneaky idea. I snuck into the garage, opened up her little Cadillac that she wanted so badly, and pissed on the seats, with the hope that it will seep into the seats and carpets. It was a meager retribution for the evil she had done to me, but it did at least improve my mood a little. My job done, I slipped back out and got into my truck. I decided to go to my parents. They were surprised to see me. "I thought you were working." I told them how I suddenly had a free day, that I came home early, and what happened there. They were both shocked, and I saw Dad blush. Mom just said I should stay for dinner. She was preparing her world-famous lasagna. Or at least she should have been world-famous if she ever shared her recipe. Over dinner, we discussed my options. Mom thought that I should divorce the person as soon as possible. Dad and I pointed out the obvious disadvantages of this. We toyed with the idea of temporarily moving to another, more male-friendly state and getting a divorce there. But a quick internet search revealed that the only place in the US that was even remotely fair was American Samoa, and only because it has a tradition of divorce there meant throwing traitors into an active volcano. Mom and Dad also pointed out that the longer I waited, the more it would cost, both in terms of alimony and how much she will receive from my business. But she hasn't put a penny or a drop of sweat into my business. How can it ever be justified that she gets any of this, especially when it comes to cheating? What sane court could justify that? I agree, but that's the way things are these days. Women can take 100,000 miles of someone else's dick all they want, and it doesn't matter in the eyes of the law. All that matters is what they see as a fair distribution of the common property. Dad and I discussed the relative merits of getting rid of both of them. "You know, son, I have a farm and a tractor. Lots of space to bury bodies, and I've always wondered how people serve as fertilizer." I replied, "The idea has a certain appeal, but I'll be lucky if the wild dogs find the bodies. Besides, if we do that, we won't be any better than them. Worse, in fact." We quickly abandoned this idea. It was all a joke, right? This is our version, and we stand by it. Mom suggested another option. She seems so sweet. Is there any chance of reconciliation? Maybe with a nice, strong post-nuptial agreement to protect you. "Hell no," I exclaimed. Once a traitor, always a traitor. I trusted her completely, and she chose to betray me in the worst possible way. That kind of trust will never be returned, not completely. I will always wonder what she is doing. You can't live like that. That's what I thought, and I know it's not ideal, but I was just looking for a way you could protect what's yours. But no, you're right, I couldn't imagine living like that. Ultimately, I decided to contact an attorney to learn my options. Dad gave me the business card of the company he used for his business, a company called Dewey, Fakem and Howe. "For lawyers, they are surprisingly decent people. They have never let me down," said Dad. I felt terrible about returning to this cheating woman when my mother invited me to stay the night. I didn't want to be a burden, But Dad pointed out that I needed to step away from it all to cool down so I wouldn't do something really stupid. As always, my parents were right. I called home and made up a lame excuse about having a plumbing emergency that would probably keep me up late into the night. Looks like it'll be pretty late, so I'll probably just spend the night at my parents'. Anyway, I have to go. The lady of the house is already looking at me sideways. I hung up. This last statement was indeed mostly true. The owner of the house, my mother, actually looked at my phone with reproach. I wondered for a moment if Christy had noticed that I hadn't said my usual "love you" to her before ending the call, although I didn't care anymore. We sat a little longer. Dad and I drank a couple of beers, and we talked about my options and what I could do moving forward. We discussed a few ideas that I could discuss with them. They talked to a lawyer about my capabilities and what I can do in the future. We discussed several ideas that I would like to ask my lawyer about. The next few days passed as usual. I worked if necessary. I went home, but generally tried to come up with any excuse to stay with my parents. Wouldn't you know it, Dad somehow injured his leg, and they needed my help on the farm. I couldn't tell if Christy was upset about this or not. Perhaps this gave her a chance to fuck Chad some more in what used to be my marital bed. My only concern was that she wouldn't get suspicious, but most likely the self-centered bitch wouldn't notice anyway. I called the lawyers while I was on break Tuesday morning. One of their divorce lawyers had their first meeting Thursday morning. I had work scheduled at the time, but Mick agreed he would pick it up between jobs. Good man, I'll have to repay him. Thursday morning arrived, and I found myself sitting at the incredibly large oak table of one Natalia Devine. She looked at me, and I could tell she wasn't impressed. Given the way I was dressed, she probably decided I couldn't afford her. However, she had the best reputation in the firm, and was probably smart enough to know that looks weren't everything. Truth be told, she was probably right. I probably couldn't afford her fee, especially if Christy did what we expected and fought the divorce. I told her the story and was not surprised when she detailed how financially crippled I would be. The surprise came when I learned that, practically speaking, I would probably have to sell my business or otherwise liquidate it. Even worse was the new scheme that the courts came up with. It seems that many business owners have managed to sell their business for next to nothing on paper. Enough complaints were received that it was decided that the court had sole authority to decide what a business was worth, and they were almost always overly generous in their assessments. There was a famous local case, a really nasty scam, where a local restaurateur honestly tried to sell his restaurant for as much as he could, but could only get $500,000. His wife, who apparently had never met a person she didn't like, preferably several, had a real shark lawyer who pulled out some bullshit about how 20 years ago this restaurant was doing very well, and therefore he was worth a lot. The court agreed and estimated its value to be closer to $2 million. Half of that amount left the man still owing $500,000 out of pocket, money he didn't have. The poor guy was found 6 months later. It seems he decided to test whether his ceiling could support his body weight. To be fair, the bitch never saw her money, but the main thing is that a precedent was set. I asked the lawyer the obvious question. Christy has never put an ounce of sweat or a dime into my business. Mick and I built everything in it with our own hands. Doesn't it matter? Not at all, Natalia answered. The legal theory is that by staying home and taking care of the household, it allows you to work without having to worry about doing household chores. It's funny because she never lifted a finger for this. As far as I can tell, her job is to spend as much of my money on expensive clothes and jewelry as possible. It still doesn't matter to the court. In fact, they have so many divorce cases that they simply decide to split everything in half and give the non-earning spouse, usually the wife, alimony so she can maintain her standard of living. It made my brain stop. Usual standard of living. I'm guessing if you're willing to end your marriage over cheating, you're also willing to give up your standard of living. Also, what does this term even mean? As Chris Rock said, when you go to a restaurant, you're used to eating. When you leave, you don't eat anymore. They don't owe you steak. My lawyer continued. The only mitigating factor when it comes to your business is that the court may decide that each partner is entitled to half. So Mick will get half and Christy can only claim half of your share. Fine. How about we rewrite the business so that Mick is the sole owner and I'm just an employee? I knew that Mick would play fair with me. Once this unpleasant matter was over, we would return to a full and equal partnership. It was worth a try, I thought. You can try, but the courts are not stupid. You'll likely have to continue like this for at least 2 years to show that you didn't do it just to avoid repayments. Even then, a good lawyer might argue that Christie is still entitled to compensation for the years you own the business. So, essentially, I am faced with a choice. Either pay Christie some arbitrary amount set by a court that may not be particularly favorable to me, or continue the charade of our marriage for a few more years in the hope of maintaining my business and not giving away so much money, but even that is not guaranteed, right? About that, yes, everyone has their own idea of what is fair, and that's what the courts have determined. I was furious. How does it work that she cheats on me, conspires with her lover to get as much out of me as possible, and she also gets paid for it? My Irish stubbornness came into play. I just refused to imagine these two getting rewarded for their bad behavior. I thanked Natalia and said that I would answer her when I thought about it a little. Besides, I had to go to work that afternoon. Natalia reminded me that it wouldn't get better if I waited. The choice will simply be between bad and very bad. She also warned me not to do anything stupid and have a baby with Christy. She also said that although this initial consultation was free, if I wanted to continue, I would have to leave a deposit. Even a short phone call with a simple question that takes 10 seconds of her time counts as an hour of work. Damn, where can I get money for a deposit? Did I really want to leave him? I called my dad to ask his advice, and he told me that I would be wise to leave a deposit. He also told me that I would be doing this at my own expense. They themselves were having financial difficulties. I called Mick, and he said pretty much the same thing. Leave a deposit. He offered to borrow it from our business. Blue Eye, I'm not 100% sure this is completely legal, but if you can resolve this within a few months, we can probably sweep this under the rug. If not, it may help show that the business is not doing so well and we won't lose as much. Maybe we can even somehow justify this as protecting business. So I used a business credit card to leave a significant deposit for Natalia. They say that clients get what they pay for in legal representation, and I could only hope that this would be true in my case. I spent the next few weeks in a fog. What could I do? I thought about making Christy and Chad disappear again, but I knew I would be number 1A, B, Roman 3, and D on the list of suspects. Even if the authorities could never prove anything, the accusations would haunt me for the rest of my life. Just hoping she would suddenly die of a heart attack seemed unlikely at best. Maybe I could arrange it. No, modern forensic scientists are very discerning and will be suspicious if an otherwise healthy 30-year-old woman suddenly develops serious heart problems. Hell, I'd rather win the lottery than avoid suspicion. Wait, didn't I buy a lottery ticket a couple of weeks ago? Might be worth checking out. I was half watching TV and half distracted when a story on the news caught my attention. In local news, the winner of this month's $12 million Lotto America jackpot has yet to come forward. Lottery officials say the ticket was purchased at a Valero store near the town of South North Hills. Officials say the winner is expected to come forward within 180 days, otherwise the winnings will be lost forever. I took out my ticket and checked the numbers from the winning drawing. And here they are. All the numbers matched. I had $12 million in my hands. Well, not exactly 12 million. After paying taxes and receiving a lump sum payment, the true amount would be somewhere closer to $5 million. That's still a lot. Maybe I could push through a quick divorce, pay the bitch whatever she needs, and then cash the ticket. Of course, she couldn't claim what was paid out after the divorce, right? Natalia quickly explained to me that it doesn't matter as long as you get paid. It matters when you bought your ticket, and no matter how you slice it, you clearly bought it while you were married. She will be entitled to her half, in addition to everything else. But it was my money that bought the ticket. Doesn't that mean anything? Unfortunately, no. Any money you have while married is considered marital property, so the ticket you purchase is also marital property. Look, I understand that you don't like the idea of paying your wife anything, and it will only make her even richer, but at least this way you'll still get something. It's still rewarding bad behavior. I understand where you're coming from, but what matters is what the law says, not what's right. Hey, I got an idea. What if I give her the entire ticket? In exchange for a divorce, she will give up all claims to everything else. No house, no business, no child support. Essentially, this will be a lump sum payment, and it will only cost me $10. Yes, she will get money. She will still be rewarded for bad behavior, but at least this way it will be mostly other people's money, not mine, and I might be able to keep my business. You can also try. The only way to know for sure is to suggest it. She and Chad might be so blinded by greed and desire that they'll just jump at the offer. She thought for a moment, as if something had occurred to her. Let me look at this ticket again. I showed her the ticket. She looked at him and smiled. What? I asked. I think I have a better idea. She began to explain to me the details of her plan. This could actually work, I thought, although I would have to rely on some luck. Armed with a plan and some documents, I headed home, walked in, and was only slightly shocked to find Christy with Chadwick having sex. And at this time, I also had to be at work. Never one to miss an opportunity, I pulled Chad out by his greasy hair. I felt an irresistible urge to immediately disinfect my hands, preferably with a gas torch. Hey, what the hell, dude, he beeped. Don't you know that it's considered impolite to touch someone else's wife until there's a divorce? Hey, dude, he stopped talking when I need him. Below the belt. No, you have no right to touch my wife, in my house, on my furniture, and think you have something to say. You have nothing I want to hear. Be a good boy and get out of my house. I escorted him to the door. I may have accidentally missed the doorway the first couple times while trying to escort him out of my house. Oh, I always laughed when Al Bundy did that with the Kelly boys. Having solved this problem, I turned my attention to Christy Sorry, I meant Cansty. She started with the usual cheater song. Stop it before you embarrass yourself. First of all, I know all the excuses and lies, and I'm just not interested. Secondly, I don't care what you say, this marriage is over. Thirdly, I already know the truth. She decided to become evil. Damn it, you think you know. I told her what I heard on that fateful day when I discovered their betrayal. Too bad I was too busy with work to see what was really going on. I could have dumped your cheater a lot sooner and saved myself a lot of money and a lot of pain. Fuck you. You guys are all so stupid. All you think about ice own place. Chad and I will tear you apart, and there's nothing you can do about it. Hire the best lawyer. It will only cost you more. Actually, I'm glad that you know. Now I don't have to pretend. God, how could you be so stupid as to think that someone like me could date your ugly red ass? I was not going to give in to her provocations. This seemed to confuse her somehow, almost as if she was starting to feel like she was losing control a little. Are you done insulting me? Great. Now I have an offer for you. As you know, you are counting on what you can get from my business. You contributed nothing, but somehow you think you deserve a payout. And I'm damned if I pay you so you can sleep with Chad. I continued. This is what I'm holding in my hands, a winning lottery ticket. I don't know if you saw the news. The winning ticket was sold here a month ago, and the winner hasn't come forward yet. The winning ticket was sold at the Valero gas station down the street, and guess what? That's where I bought this ticket. The numbers matched exactly. I saw her eyes light up with greed. Can I see? Wait a minute, I'm not done yet. I also have a packet of divorce papers. You will only see this ticket if you agree to the terms on the papers. We are lucky to live in a state where there is no expectation of divorce. If both parties agree, the marriage is impossible to save and agree to the division of property, it ends so quickly. I handed her the package. Read it, but the gist is this. We agree on a quick divorce. You keep all your personal belongings, including jewelry and clothes. I already checked this out to see if I could at least get half the value of these things, since it was my money that paid for it all. Surprisingly, this was considered personal property, not marital property, and therefore it all belonged to her. The blows continued. I continued, "You keep the Cadillac." She interrupted me. "By the way, there was some strange smell of urine with this, and I can't figure out what's wrong. The service department can't figure it out either." I tried to look surprised. Maybe the catalytic converter is going bad. I've heard when they start going bad, the interior can start to smell like urine. I may or may not have made several additional service visits over the past few weeks. I held back a grin. As I said, you keep the Cadillac. I also relinquish all rights to this winning lottery ticket in your favor. As you know, the winning lottery ticket is worth $12 million. The lump sum payment after taxes will be approximately $5 million. Your share would be $25 million. So, in essence, you get an additional $25 million. She looked at me with bewilderment. "What's in it for you?" "Simple. By accepting this ticket, you agree to a quick, uncontested divorce. You sign a quitclaim deed to the house, making it exclusively mine. You forever renounce any claim to anything from my business, including money, equipment, and income. You waive any claim to any of my personal property. You agree that after the divorce we will never contact each other, and that you will never come within 1,000 yards of my property or my parents' property if you see me. Outside, you should turn around and leave without trying to talk to me. In short, I want this marriage to end as quickly as possible, and I prefer not to get into a fight over what my assets are really worth. I've decided. By signing this ticket for you, you will get what you want, that is, money, and I will get what I want, namely, to keep my business intact and not have problems with you in the future. In fact, I wanted to add a clause where Christy had to move as far away as possible, but Natalia reminded me that I have no right to tell anyone where to live. In fact, without a restraining order for which I would have to show cause, even the parts about not approaching or contacting my parents, my property, or me were reduced to a simple request. I finished, "And you waive any right to sue me in the future for any reason." Why this no contact and no claim clause? Just to protect me. I don't need you and Chad to blow your money and suddenly decide you're entitled to more and sue me. I have a hard time imagining any court in the country would actually award you anything. But I don't want to waste my time and money defending against even absurd lawsuits. This was not entirely true. My lawyer indicated to me that if she could find a good enough lawyer, she could challenge the part about the waiver of claims against my business. And if it somehow worked, the penalties would ruin both Mick and me. The non-sue clause was not impenetrable, but she would have to get a very good lawyer to break it, and in any case, it was another layer to my defense. I saw the gears begin to turn in her head. Maybe I should call a lawyer. I wasn't surprised by this, although I hoped she wouldn't do it. Time for persuasion. Well, of course you can, but why spend all that money to be told that this is the best offer you can get? My lawyer has already done all the hard work. Why don't you save the money and leave with as much as possible? I'll tell you what, let me sweeten the deal a little more. I'll pay taxes on your share of the lottery winnings. My lawyer realized that I might need to strengthen the deal and suggested this as an addition. Taxes on millions of dollars are not small. As I had hoped, her greed got the better of her. Okay, but first, can I see the ticket? My lawyer advised me to keep the ticket with me until the divorce is finalized. Once the divorce is finalized, I will give it to you. But you know what? I can show it to you. And I actually did it while holding the ticket by the bottom. I held up the jackpot numbers and showed her how they all matched. Her eyes widened. "So you're not kidding me? So all I have to do is agree to a quick divorce, and you hand over this ticket to me and pay all the taxes on the winnings? Don't forget the rest of what we agreed on." Yeah, like I need this crappy house. Give her the opportunity to throw some more shade. How the hell is this important? Once the house is all mine, and I keep more of my income, this place will be a real beauty. It's a shame she'll never see this. Her losses. So we have a deal? Can we think about it for the night? Of course, but don't wait too long. This is a limited time offer, as they say. But yes, think about it tonight. I will spend the night at my parents'. If you agree, all you have to do is sign the documents in the indicated places, and I'll take them to court. I hope we can get to the judge quickly and end this farce. With these words, I left. My parents, of course, pressed me for updates, and I just told them that my lawyer had finally brought me to my senses and that I should just get a divorce and cover the costs and be done with it. They wondered about my change of heart, and I told them that I had finally realized that neither option was good, so it was best to end it and move on. I think they suspected I was hiding something, which was true, but they didn't dig around, and I wasn't going to suggest it either. I knew Christy would call Chad the jerk as soon as I left. I would have preferred otherwise. There was always a chance that they could come up with something that could ruin my plan. There was nothing I could do about it. I just had to hope that Chad would remain as dumb as I thought he was, and that Christy couldn't see past his greed. That's exactly what happened. Christy called me the next morning and said that she agreed and signed all the documents. I called Mick and asked him to take care of my business for the day as I needed to do this. Of course, he knew everything that was happening, so he agreed without any problems. In addition, it was also important for him to protect our business. I returned home and picked up the package. The lottery ticket was still safely in my wallet. It was impossible to lose him. It was my only real trump card. I checked, and she actually signed everything where required. I took the package to my lawyer. Natalia asked, "Well, how do you think things are going?" So far, so good, I think. There were a couple of moments where I was afraid she might disagree, but in the end, she's too greedy for her own good. Great. Let me take this to court. I'll try to reach an agreement on Friday afternoon. Natalia really kept her word and arranged for us to have a court hearing on Friday afternoon. There we stood, Christy and I, in front of the judge. I couldn't stop it. It was the end of 8 years of marriage, almost 9 years together, and damn it, I loved her once. And she was still so beautiful. Why did she have to be such a cunning, greedy bitch? A single tear escaped my eye. The judge carefully examined the documents. So, if I understand correctly, you both wish to get divorced due to irreconcilable differences and have this court approve the divorce immediately. Yes, Your Honor, we both replied. Yes. Do either of you have any reasons why this still shouldn't happen? No, Your Honor. Okay. Now, I see that you, Mr. Dizzy O'Neill, claim that you have a winning Lotto America ticket, and that in exchange for giving it to Mrs. Ray O'Neill, she waives any other form of payment or claim. I thought about it. Yes, I have a winning lottery ticket for her, Your Honor. Do you, Mrs. O'Neill, agree with this deal? Yes, Your Honor, I agree. And you swear that you agreed to this deal voluntarily, not under pressure, and are not doing it under duress? I swear it, Your Honor. I started to sweat a little. It wouldn't be good if the judge became suspicious and started asking questions that I didn't want to answer. He continued, "Okay, this is a little unusual, but this court will honor the wishes of two adults who entered into this agreement of their own free will. The divorce is granted. Mr. O'Neill must immediately provide Mrs. Nichols with this ticket. All provisions of the decree of divorce will take effect immediately." I handed her the ticket, and she immediately signed it on the back. With that, everything was over except the screams. Her personal belongings were already loaded into a rented U-Haul van and her Cadillac. She completely left my life. I was in the middle of mowing the lawn the next Monday morning when my phone rang. I saw Christy's number and answered. I had a suspicion what she was going to say. "What the hell are you up to?" she squealed. "I'm sure I don't know what you're talking about." "You bastard, you know perfectly well what you did. This ticket is worth nothing." "It's worth nothing, but the numbers matched. I even showed it to you. I don't understand." The numbers matched, but the date didn't. Your ticket was for Monday, September 12th, but the winning lottery was held on Wednesday, September 14th. That ticket only won $2 damn. What the hell am I going to do with it? I couldn't stop laughing. How stupid of me it was not to notice the date. I heard her continue to scream, "This is a scam. I will ruin you with lawsuits." Don't forget, when you signed this agreement, you gave up any rights to sue me, ever, for any reason. Oh, and you agreed to no contact. So, if you have any complaints, I suggest that your lawyer contact my lawyer. Otherwise, delete this number. I hung up and blocked her number. She tried again, presumably from Chad's number, and I immediately blocked him too. I sat back on my tractor and couldn't help but laugh. I actually had a winning lottery ticket. The fact that the winnings were only $2 was neither here nor there as far as I was concerned. Also, my promise to pay tax on winnings. First, who will tax the $2? Second, even if they did, I would simply claim the $10 I spent on the ticket as a gambling loss, and voila, tax-free. The fact that one set of numbers on the ticket coincidentally matched the winning numbers drawn 2 nights later was simply an accident. Or perhaps there really is a higher power that is watching over me. Take victories whenever possible, I always say. Honestly, I thought I had a jackpot ticket, and I wouldn't mind giving it to her, just to get rid of this bitch clean and simple. It was my lawyer Natalia who noticed that the dates did not match. It turned out that several years ago Natalia was faced with the betrayal of her husband, who emptied her accounts and disappeared. Once we put her plan into motion, we were confident enough that Christy wouldn't be able to see past her greed. Our only real concern was that the real winner might show up before our plan was completed and inadvertently ruin it. As it turned out, no one ever claimed the jackpot. The media speculated that the winner accidentally threw away his ticket. This jackpot was eventually returned when I took another ticket for the same lottery. And nothing, not even $1. What, you thought this was the kind of story? As for the judge, I generally had nothing to worry about. He immediately understood what was going on, but since he was also burned by his wife's betrayal, he was completely on our side. Natalia specifically asked for him and the time on Friday afternoon. His questions were purely in case anyone ever looked at our divorce more closely. They were intended to prevent any claims of unfairness if the case was ever reconsidered. The Friday afternoon time was chosen so that Christy would not have time to get to the lottery offices before they closed for the weekend. I could only imagine the reaction of the lottery commission when Christy came to collect her measly $2. Typically, such winnings are claimed directly from retailers. Only large winnings are collected at lottery headquarters. The idea of how it went made me hysterical. And that's how, with some luck, I was able to leave my cheating wife, pure and simple, and all it cost me was a $10 lottery ticket and some attorney fees. Hooray for me. For those wondering, no, I have not started dating Natalia. First of all, she is 20 years older than me. Secondly, why should I meet with a lawyer? They have their advantages, but overall they do not inspire confidence. Although I have to admit, Natalia is better than most. And third, I ended up reconnecting with a local girl I dated occasionally in high school. Her name was Kelly Cooper, and she was a real treasure. We went on a few dates every now and then, but due to my responsibilities on my parents' farm, we never got serious about dating. We lost touch when I left for the Navy. A few months after my divorce, I was at a bar having a few drinks with Mick after a busy day of lawn work and plumbing repairs. Hey, Blue Eye, Sheila Kelly has her eyes on you. So her name is Sheila or Kelly, or is it Sheila Kelly? Ha ha, you know who I'm talking about. Do you remember her? I looked and saw a beautiful woman. To be honest, not as beautiful as Christy was perhaps no one ever will be, but a sweet lady like no other. Plus, I think I've learned a lesson about real beauty. I don't remember. You fool, this is Kelly Cooper. You met her a few times, remember? Strangely, I thought she didn't seem like the fairly ordinary Kelly I remembered from school. I took a closer look and understood. Take the Kelly I remembered, round it out a bit, add a butt, and a nice set of breasts, add some wrinkles around the eyes. Yes, that's her. It was in the eyes. She had the most striking gray-green eyes. Not the eyes of a movie actress in general, but the kind of eyes that had a certain openness and warmth, as if I could see into the very depths of her soul. And now she looked at me with those eyes. I picked up my beer mug and walked over to her table. "Do you mind if I sit down?" Blue Y. O'Neill, how I live and breathe. I thought I'd never see you again. I chuckled. "You haven't answered my question yet." "Yes, still the same mocking one. Sit down, sit down." I sat down and we began to reconnect. Strangely, there was no awkwardness between us. It was almost as if the years that had passed since we last saw each other had simply melted away. I told her about my adventures in the Navy, touching on meeting, marrying, and divorcing Christy, and how I became a business owner with Mick. For her part, Kelly said she went to college, got a business degree, and got a job at the ominous corporation. She moved up the career ladder not too quickly, but steadily. She was on her way to a high position. Kelly continued, "You know, I loved dating you in high school, and I always hoped that it might turn into something more. I was sad when you left town after high school. When I found out you went to the Navy, I thought you were out of my life forever. When I heard that you were back, I was delighted. I was going to get you back, especially since I had finally grown into my body, and I knew for sure that as soon as you saw me, we would be together again. Maybe you might not have been interested in me when I was a brat in high school, but now that I'm a full-fledged woman, you definitely wouldn't be able to resist. But when I saw you with that bitch and the way you were after her, my heart broke again. I just knew that we would never have anything. I was so upset that I basically locked myself in my apartment for almost a year. I even took medical leave for about 6 months. It's amazing what you can get a doctor to write on the form. But I just couldn't go out into the city and risk meeting you with that bitch. I was angry at you for passing me by and at her for stealing my man. After a while, I decided that I needed to get over it. I pulled myself out of the apartment and started working again. My job allowed me to work from home as much as I needed, so I didn't lose my job, but I finally realized that I can't stay closed forever. A year later, and I thought I had finally gotten over it. I met Brad, we started dating. I thought I loved him, so I said yes when he proposed. And Brad was a really nice man, although not overly ambitious. He always treated me well. We were married for 2 years, but something felt wrong. One day it became clear to me, he's just not you. My feelings for you didn't go away, I just buried them. Maybe I should have asked for a refund from my therapist. When I filed divorce papers with Brad, he wasn't surprised. He just said that somehow he always knew that my heart wasn't in it. He didn't resist the divorce, and we separated, each with his own, nothing more, nothing less. She stopped when she noticed that I was staring at her. "What's wrong, Blue Y?" I responded, "Wow, that sounds like real stokerism. Did you think this was some kind of cheesy romantic comedy? These things only happen in movies. Maybe you really needed a better therapist." She looked shocked. "Oh God, I didn't mean this. Oh no, I thought it would be different." Kelly trailed off and looked like she was about to have a complete meltdown when she noticed I was laughing loudly. Kelly hit me on the arm, presumably playfully. It still hurts a little, but she laughed too. "You bastard, you really scared me." "Sorry, I didn't mean to. You know, it's strange to me that someone could miss me so much, although it's nice, of course. Hell, maybe it was one of those stupid romantic comedies. We spent a lot more time at Jimmy's bar than we expected. Not so much that we had to be carried out in a taxi or anything like that. Jimmy's bar didn't tolerate heavy drinking, but enough that we both wanted to call a taxi. To save money, we decided to share a taxi and maybe steal a few more minutes together. Too soon, it seemed to me. Why did it seem so to me? We stopped at her entrance. She had a hesitant smile on her face as we both walked out. I realized she was hesitating about one more drink. "It's time to take the initiative into your own hands." I leaned into the taxi and asked the driver to wait a minute. He didn't care since the meter was still running. I turned to Kelly and said, "Listen, can I get your number? I'd like to see you again." When she dictated the numbers, I entered them into the phone. Then I sent her a text message. "Here, now you have my number too. About one more drink. That would be great, but if it leads anywhere, we hopefully have a whole life ahead of us. I'd really like it to be the right life. If you know what I mean." I gave her a quick kiss on the cheek and climbed back into the taxi. As we drove away, I looked back and saw that she had a stupid smile on her face. Just before the taxi turned the corner, I saw her turn and walk up the steps to the entrance of her building. Will our meeting be something more? Only God knows, but I think I'd like to try. But that's a story for another day. As for Christy and Chad, I never heard from them again. I learned through friends that Christy quickly returned to San Diego, apparently without Chad. Chad was seen once or twice around town, but I quietly made it clear around town that I didn't like people who stole from me, and that I could take exception to, say, a dark alley. I didn't really care about shit like him, but I thought it was funny to make him a little nervous. After a few months, they also stopped seeing Chad. Let him go to hell. Subscribe to our channel so that your second chaff doesn't cheat on you, and go ahead and listen to the next story, because this story is nothing compared to the next one. If you're under 18, don't even think about listening to the next one.